welcome back to Recovery Demystified. My name's Early, I'll be your host. Today we're doing something a little bit different. A while back, I had someone randomly email me, and I get a lot of, robot emails of people being like, do you want to search engine optimize your podcast? Or we will edit your podcast for you for only $70 an episode or whatever. So I kind of figured it was another one of those robots. But then I read the email and I looked the feller up, and sure enough, he was a real human. His name is Samar Kargbo, and he's just a nice guy with a new podcast who's looking for people to interview that are in the nonprofit world, that are doing good, that have experiences with imposter syndrome. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, I have experiences with imposter syndrome. I think it's just a normal part of the human condition. I think that everyone experiences it from time to time. It's one of those intrusive thoughts I think is pretty common, do I really belong here? I don't deserve this. Different thoughts like that. So I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I've definitely experienced that in multiple places in my life. So he called me up and we had a chat on the phone, and then he put it out as episode 17 of his podcast. And today I'm just going to put that replay on here for y'all because I talked just a little bit about my addiction, some stuff about recovery, and then tools that I use to get through difficult times and how I confronted my imposter syndrome to, honor it and work through it and make healthier choices in the end. I talk a bit about my time working on the ambulance and then some stuff about running the nonprofit. It's pretty vulnerable, but yeah, I'm excited for y'all to have a listen to it. So without further ado, here is that replay of Samar Kargbo's interview with me and his podcast called Sort of Sure.
Welcome to the Sort of Sure podcast, where doubt looms, fear whispers, and the only way forward is through. I'm Samar Kargbo, and if you've ever felt like you're just sort of sure about what you're doing, you're not alone. This is where we face the uncertainty, push past the hesitation, and keep going anyway. So take a breath, step in, and let's move forward together. Hello and welcome to the Sort of Sure podcast. As you may have heard in the intro, my name is Samar Kargbo, and we have a stellar episode for you today. We've got Early Brunner, and they are a powerhouse of pushing events for recovery and growing a nonprofit and pushing past imposter syndrome in order to live a life that they're proud of. Now, as you go into this episode, you're going to notice a slightly different method of editing that I've done. You'll hear a little bit more of me in it, and that's just because as we move on, I'm finding my identity kind of as sort of sure, and I want to include more of my own voice so that we can actually have it sound like a conversation instead of a few episodes sound more like monologues. So we're going to push this kind for a little while and see how it goes. If you have a story to tell, shoot me an email at sortofsurepod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Without further ado, let's get on to Early. Let's have a listen.
My name's Early. My pronouns are they, them. I am queer and I live in a cabin in the woods, and I recently started a new nonprofit that does non-religious addiction recovery services here in Northwest Arkansas.
That is fantastic. I want to start as far back as we can. So would you mind sharing a bit about your personal background? What early experiences shaped your view of the world?
Yeah, I would love to. So I grew up as an autistic child, but I didn't know that I was autistic. So I experienced pretty intense social rejection as a kid. It was really confusing. And for some reason, I just didn't ever talk to anyone about it. I was just, bullied and rejected, and it was extremely painful for me, and I felt intensely alone. And at some point growing up, I discovered that drugs and alcohol led to an immediate friend group and social acceptance. However, I couldn't control my use at all. It was all or nothing. I was immediately just a binge drinker, a blackout drinker. So that experience of social acceptance that I had was pretty quickly followed by negative repercussions. But very soon I became pretty severely addicted to alcohol. So even in my mid-teenage years in high school, that initial aha moment of having that social acceptance just very quickly became drinking in the morning, puking in my sleep, and then the social acceptance became social rejection because I started acting badly. So I would be out there breaking bottles in the street and then getting kicked out of the party instead of having that friendship that I really, really desired. And then I got kind of just stuck in this feedback loop of addiction and surrounding myself with people that would find that acceptable, which was also people that were in addiction also very deeply. And I constantly was trying to work my way out of it, find recovery, but I never really had the resources that I needed. And then all along it was watching my friends suffer, watching my friends die, being afraid that I was going to die, and at sometimes wanting to die. And I tried AA, and that religious approach just didn't really work for me. I went to jail several times, lost a bunch of jobs, and I also was institutionalized, sometimes on purpose, sometimes against my will. And all of that just kind of made me feel hopeless and hate myself. And eventually I just discovered a book. It's called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and it was the first time that I ever saw that it was possible to just rewire your brain and move on from addiction. And it blew my mind, and it was so exciting to me, and I just felt like I had been wallowing in my own sorrow and dithering needlessly for, it was 13 years in between the first time I tried to quit drinking and when I found this book. And then I, through finding that book, found there's a whole genre of books that's called Quit Lit, and I started educating myself, learning about neuroscience, and forgiving myself for all of the hell that I'd caused over the years. And in conjunction with that, I also found recovery podcasts and educated myself through both of those things, and something switched, and I was able to begin to find lasting recovery.
Imposter syndrome shows up a little bit differently for different people. Can you tell me what it's been like for you?
So I've experienced imposter syndrome in a couple of different ways in my life, and one is with running the nonprofit, but another one came before running the nonprofit. And it has less to do, I think, with being on the autism spectrum and more to do with feeling like society sees me as a worthless piece of shit for having an addiction and being in recovery. And so the first time I experienced it was when I was new in recovery and I decided that I wanted to start working in emergency medical services. I was really drawn to the idea of it, and I began as a volunteer firefighter just to see what it would be like. And as it turns out, I really thrived in that emergency environment. I was able to think really clearly and do really well. And then after that, I went to EMT school and applied to work on an ambulance, and I actually had to wait a couple of months for my last DUI to come off of my driving record before they would consider my application on the ambulance. And the interesting thing at the volunteer fire department was when I applied there, they were like, "Oh, cool, welcome. Do you want to learn how to drive the fire truck?" And I was like, "Didn't you see on my application where I talk about the DUIs?" And they're like, "Yeah, everyone has DUIs. Do you want to learn how to drive the fire truck?" And it just kind of blew my mind that people were so accepting of it. And the HR manager at the ambulance company that I applied at was like, "Oh, right now we can't insure you, so I can't interview you. But in a few months, when it's off of your record, I would be happy to interview you because you'll be valid on our insurance." And so he had the whole picture. everyone knew I had an addiction. I'm in recovery. And they're still like, do you want to drive the fire truck? Do you want to drive the ambulance? Like, you have the training, you have a license, you have certification. And yet I was like, why are these people letting me do this? Why are they allowing me to go to medical emergencies and drive an ambulance and drive a fire truck? Like, I shouldn't be allowed to do this. Don't they know I'm a scumbag? Don't they know I'm a loser? And so I definitely suffered pretty intensely with imposter syndrome throughout that for a while until I just like got enough experience doing it and had enough people like accepting me and encouraging me and being like, no, you're intelligent, you have the training and you're good at this. And it just took like experience and repeated acceptance for me to be like, okay, no, I do, like, I have a license, I have training, like I'm thriving in this environment. And the imposter syndrome, I was just like, I just can't let this hold me down, I guess. And later, as I decided that I was done with my time in emergency medical services, I became like really excited about working with people in recovery because I knew how much I had suffered. I've seen how much other people suffer. I have a lot of friends that have died as a result of their addiction, and I'm just like became so passionate about wanting to help people with that. But the thing about that is that in this case, I don't have any official training and I don't have a license or a certificate or anything. I didn't go to college, but yet when I talk to people, I still have a positive effect and they're still grateful and they are still like really excited about the support groups that we're having. And there's like a ton of research into peer support that shows that when someone's been through something that you've also been through, just that factor of being relatable makes it so you're getting like a huge therapeutic benefit. And a lot of times, like also in my own experience, when I've gone to like a psychiatrist who's sitting behind some big mahogany desk with all of the certificates of PhD and stuff behind the wall, I just feel like this person doesn't understand me. And I appreciate training, and I think that certifications are important. And I think that having both types of people in our lives, if we're like seeking therapeutic benefit, having a professional with training and then having someone that's also been through it is really important. But I've definitely gone through that with starting the nonprofit, being like, why would anyone listen to me? You know, I didn't go to college, but it's also like, I went to the school of life, you know, so I totally experienced imposter syndrome with running the nonprofit as well. But hearing people's feedback, seeing them thrive, hearing people say like, wow, these support groups, this like science-based, non-religious approach is so needed in our society and it's helping me so much, like that pretty immediately squelches out whatever imposter syndrome has tried to worm its way into my brain.
I'm wondering if you've had any pressure to just blend in instead of being special.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I definitely have had pressure to blend in, and it was really hard in the ambulance, mostly with my coworkers and less with like the general public, because the general public sort of like expects this professional attitude, which is like a mask that it's really easy to plug into what they expect of you. So it was pretty easy just to like, especially since I had like this natural ability just to be calm in any situation, I was like really well suited to that. And yeah, a like prescriptive mask is really easy for me to put on. Like also I've done a lot of waiting tables and service industry type of stuff. And when it's like, when there's a really clear thing that people expect from me, I can just like put that mask on like a costume and it's not so hard. But with my coworkers on the ambulance, it was like this whole new subculture of people that I wasn't really used to. And in the healthcare industry, like there's a lot of like nuanced different coping skills and like ways of interacting with people that I had to learn like a whole new language. Like there's all of these superstitions that people would be like, okay, you can't polish your boots and you can't look at this part of the pediatric bag and you can't say it's going to be quiet that night, or you can't like say that your shift is slow, or there's all of these like new ways of interacting with people that were like the norms for the healthcare industry that I was like completely unaware of. And if I thought it was funny to like joke with people like, oh yeah, so quiet today, like to me that was funny, and to some people it like legitimately made them angry. So definitely it was a huge new set of cultural norms for me. and very difficult to learn being on the autism spectrum. And sometimes I would get like flustered with the behavior of other people and not understand how to interact with my coworkers. And it definitely made it more challenging just being in this entire new subculture of the world. And like when we see horrible things every day, like there's also all of these ways of like coping with that trauma. And a lot of it is like, the ways that most of my coworkers coped with the trauma didn't resonate with me. So I did have a lot of, difficult social interactions at my job. But as far as, being with the patients and treating them, it was pretty easy to plug into that professional attitude of what they expect and feel safe in that.
That's great. And we've touched on a few things and a few reasons that just about anybody would freeze up and keep from moving forward, but you've moved forward past them. So I'm wondering, do you have a habit or a mechanism in place in your life that has helped you whenever something seems perhaps insurmountable or imposter syndrome sneaks in, move forward anyway?
Yeah, there's just like a couple of things that come right to mind. I mean, I've been in therapy for a really long time, so I've just made a lot of work with I've done a lot of work with myself personally, but there's like a couple of tips that I would give to someone if they're struggling, and one is the phrase, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So if something seems like just massively insurmountable and difficult and it takes too many steps and how could I ever accomplish that, you break it down into tiny little bite-sized pieces. You take one baby step, you do the next right thing, and eventually 5,000 steps later, you've walked a mile. And so at times when I'm just like, gosh, like how could I ever, start a whole nonprofit? Like I'm just Joe Schmo, like with a high school education and just a lot of experience being a drunk loser. But as it turns out, that's all it takes to have the ability. I mean, it's that and it's passion, and it's like something that's important to me. So breaking everything down into bite-sized pieces and reminding myself of that phrase, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. Not that I would ever eat an elephant. I'm a vegetarian, but there's that. And then the other thing that immediately comes to mind is having the values of a good eulogy instead of a bad one. And that's kind of cryptic to think about, but if you think of someone reading your eulogy at the end of your life, like, do you want it to say, well, they worked their life away at a job they hated and they never had time to do anything they loved and, then they died an early death and that's about it? Or do you want the person reading your eulogy at your funeral to be like, they lived passionately and bravely and they loved other people and they spent time in nature and they fought for what they believed in, so like if I'm ever questioning myself or my goals, like, can I do this? Is it worth it? I like to think from a eulogy perspective, like, what do I want to leave behind for people and what do I want, like, the broader picture of my life to look like? And I know it's like kind of a scary thought to like think about your own death, but just like reflecting from the end of the life, looking backwards, like what choices would a person make to avoid regret, and I like to let that set the fire underneath of me to move forward to things that might be scary but that are really important.
So wonderfully said.
I didn't invent the eulogy concept either, or obviously the eating the elephant. Those are things that I've learned from other people, but that just really, really stick with me.
All right, great. I'm totally going to tell people you created it when I repeat it.
Trademark, early dinner.
So I do always ask if you had somebody who is perhaps where you were a few years ago, who is perhaps in the throes of addiction or any number of the things that you've overcome, and they're struggling with self-doubt and imposter syndrome. What advice would you have for them?
It sounds like the most trite thing ever, but we have to find a way to love ourselves and take each action by asking ourselves, what would someone who loves themselves do? And fake it till you make it. And then eventually, if you keep acting in skillful ways and pretend like you're someone who loves yourself, eventually you become that. And a person who loves themselves is going to be a person who treats themselves and others with kindness and generosity and who takes positive steps forward in their life to create a life worth living. So even if you don't feel like a person who loves themselves, you do the next right thing, act skillfully. And if you do what a person who loves himself would do, eventually you find that self-love and you can create a life more beautiful than you've ever imagined.
Really, that didn't sound trite at all. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Absolutely. There is one question that I like to ask, and it's a free-for-all. No right or wrong answer, but is there anything that we haven't mentioned on the podcast so far that you would like to mention?
I think imposter syndrome is a normal part of the human condition, and it's some part inside of ourselves that's trying to protect us from failure or something. So I'm grateful for that part and the work that it's doing, but I'm also grateful for the awareness to be able to move past things that might be holding me back. So I think if someone's experiencing imposter syndrome, that you're normal, and that I think everyone goes through it whether they admit it or not.
And beautifully said again. I don't think there is a nonprofit out there that stands a chance against Shirley.
Send the people with the money, please.
There we go. Send the people with the money. I hope they're listening.
Oh, wait, don't put that on there. I mean, do? I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
that's charming. Maybe that's charming. It's hard to say. But, man, the money is the hardest part of a nonprofit, I'll tell you that much. Well, can't I just do the work?
There it is. Well, all right, Arlie. Well, it has been a distinct pleasure, and I hope you have a great rest of your night out there in the woods.
Yeah, nice talking with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. You have a good night.
All right, have a good night.
Bye-bye. I want to thank Early once again for being on the Sort of Sure podcast. It was truly a pleasure to have that conversation, and I even got secondary enjoyment out of editing this podcast. And once again, I am just going to have to figure out how to have like a special area where you can have members only shows and stuff like that. Because the raw conversation there is just so much fun, and you'd get to hear how clumsy I am talking about things I'm not so familiar with, and all that great stuff. So as soon as I figure it out, this is going to definitely be an episode that'll be included in that members only area. But other than that, folks, I have kept you long enough. I like to keep these episodes around 20 minutes, and we have got to get out of here, so I want to thank you for being part of the Sort of Sure pod family. It is a pleasure to provide these episodes for you, and to know people are listening just warms my heart, and I look forward to offering you many more episodes as we come up on 20, and we're heading toward 1,000. And remember, if you have a story to tell of imposter syndrome and self-doubt, just shoot me an email at sortofsurepod@gmail.com, and we'll see you next Friday. Later days.
Recovery Demystified is produced and edited by me, Early Brunner. Stevie Petet made our logo. Our social media manager is Kaylee Bausch. Logan Bragg wrote our beautiful theme music. We are entirely supported by donations as a 501c3 nonprofit. Your tax-deductible donations can be made to our Venmo or to our PayPal at Recovery Demystified. May you be happy and free, dear listener.